Hey Reddit. I'm a male living in Johannesburg, South Africa, also noted as one of the hot crime spots in the world. Getting robbed is just kind of something everyone is prepared for, emotionally at least. Guns aren't nearly as common as they are in America, and often I think they should be. I've never had much of a hard time in South Africa, and while I know a lot of people who have been severely affected by Johannesburg crime, I've always been pretty lucky. Nothing's ever happened to me other than attempts or close calls. That is, of course, until one night where I happened to be lost. South Africa is full of townships. They're basically settlements for anyone living at a level of poverty so appalling that it makes the American sponsor an African videos look like sponsor a Kardashian. I'm not even kidding. Here are some pictures for context. One of these townships, Alexandria, happens to be quite near a nice neighborhood where rich people stay. Big plots, big houses, etc. And a good friend of mine lives there. When I was 18, just having gotten my license, I decided to pop through to his house after going to a party with a few others. I didn't really know the way all too well if I wasn't leaving my house, but I knew that the basic idea was if I didn't go on the freeway, I'd have to go through Alexandria. And being an idiot, I figured I'd be just fine. I knew the area was dangerous as hell, but I kept getting lost and it didn't cross my mind. And so I arrive. It's dark as hell. There aren't any streetlights, just some fires that people have started on the side of the road, and I'm feeling pretty scared as shit. It's pretty damn quiet and it was late for me to be driving through, about 11 p.m. I kept going straight on the main road hoping it would take me to the place where I was going, but as time wore on I noticed Limboro Park, the area I was talking about earlier, fading away. So I pull a few funky turns. Taking a left, I catch something in my headlights that scares me. This dude who looks like a hobo, beanie, rags, is carrying a full deer across the street. It's dead. It looks like it's rotting, unsettling as fuck. I brake to let him cross and then slowly stroll past and keep an eye on him. As soon as he reaches the other side, he pulls out a hatchet and starts hacking the deer up. Needless to say, I was terrified, but I don't read into it too much. Poor people will eat whatever they can, and I'm pretty sure he was just going to eat whatever meat he could get off the deer. Keep driving and start heading down the way I came, and I'm starting to regret coming here. Still no streetlights, hardly any cars passing, just guys on the side of the road with fires lit, and they all eyed me out. I probably should have mentioned this earlier for context. White people do not go to Alexandria. That's not me being racist, it's merely fact. The white people who are in poverty in South Africa live like American trailer trash, whereas the truly impoverished black South Americans settle in the townships. And it's just not normal to see a white person there. Furthermore, my car was a black BMW 325 Ci, which is a pretty awesome car amongst the South African community, and I had a lot of people warning me that I'd be specifically targeted for a hijacking or whatever, but I only shrugged it off because I never had any reason to care. My car also had the tendency to overheat. Back to topic. I drive past a group of guys sitting all around a fire in a trash can, and as I drive past, they turn and look at me. I'm taking it pretty slow. 2 blocks down and I'm in a dead-end street, and my car's heat gauge heads over into the red. The only word going through my head is fuck, 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 and I pull over and kill the engine and lights. It's pitch black, but I can make out a few flickering lights, be it from the fires or electricity in my rear view. It didn't really look like anyone was going around, so I felt okay. But I knew I had to wait a good 20 minutes before starting up my car again. I started doing random shit and tried to get a handle on the heat problem like an open bleeder. My phone had about 30% battery still, but cut out for no damn reason while I was using the flashlight. So no phone, no car, in Alexandria. Then I hear something that made me shit myself. Not like a sudden fright, but my heart just sank and I felt like puking. I look down the road and I can barely make him out, but there's a black dude walking towards me and he's dragging a pole along the street, so I can hear the clanking sound while it rubs against the tar. Now that's a pretty obvious sign that he's not just gonna stop and say hello, and I'm shitting myself. On the bright side, I have had a lot of weird / violent confrontations and almost getting mugged, so I'd handled it before. It's just that this time I was in the middle of nowhere and I was basically a fucking pariah. So I stand there, stupidly. And then I figure my only option is to make a friend. So as he gets close, dragging his pole along, I decide to act my ass off. I quickly noticed that running would do me no good. I'd probably just get murdered somewhere if I did, and then I'd have no car, and if I stayed I risked both. But fuck it. I put on a big smile, put my hand out for a handshake and say, "Hey, what's up, buddy? How's it going? Don't worry about the car, just a little bit of heat problem." He looks a little confused and kind of pissed off, and I'm almost certain that he's just gonna whack the shit out of me with that pole. But I seriously feel like there's nothing else I can do. If I leave my car, I'll probably die in Alexandria. I might as well stay put. So I pull out my cigarettes and I offer him one, which was the first time I was really, really glad to be a smoker. I asked him for his name. He kindly grunts, Slepo, or one of those weird clicking names as he grabs a cigarette. And when I light it for him, I see his eyes are bloodshot as hell, and overall he just looks like a man in not good health. I take a look at his pole and ask him, why the fuck do you have a pole? Only I word it better. He grumbles a little bit, but I make it out. It's dangerous out here. The robbers and rapists and whatnot. I figure I need a good deal of bullshit because I just get a terrible fucking vibe from being here and from this gentleman now leaning against my car. Oh, well, you can feel safe here, I say. And I try to put I don't really know how to say this. I try to make it sound scary, which I can do pretty well. My voice is pretty commanding, but at this point, I actually want to scare him enough that he'll back off. I think it worked, because he looks at me and his eyes are kind of shifty and he says, "Why?" And I smile and say, "I've got a gun on me." And I lift my shirt a bit at the back where he can't see it. On the inside, I have a mix of emotions. Half of me is high-fiving the shit out of me because I think it's actually working, and the other half is expecting him to call my bullshit, take it as a threat, or just get pissed off. But he looks at me and I can tell he's a little freaked out, and he starts making small talk as we finish our cigarettes. He asks what I'm doing in Alex. Fair question. I tell him I got lost and leave it at that. I feel a little bit calmer now. He kills his cigarette and I really want to check on my car, but I'm not stupid enough to turn my back and look at the engine while he stands there. I shake his hand and say, "All right, thanks for the company, but it's not safe here. I think you should go." It was such an act on my part that I can't believe I pulled it off, but he says okay and walks away, pole in hand, and when I see he's gone, I turn back to my car and take the biggest fucking sigh of relief ever. Now, fortunately, the heat was back to normal. Unfortunately, my story doesn't stop there, but I'm not writing a book, and I'm over 1,500 words in, so I'll leave it at that for now. I was pretty surprised when people took interest in this. I wasn't expecting it. The second half of this story gets weird, and the third part is even worse. It was one of those nights that made me question whether the paranormal was possible, because for this much to go wrong in a space of 9 hours makes no fucking sense to me. But you asked for it. Here it is, unadulterated. In Alexandria, it made sense that shit went wrong. I just so did not fit in there, especially at night. But I guess I'm gonna keep going and fill you guys in on what was questionably the scariest / weirdest / at times interesting night of my life. The worst part is, it didn't stop until I got home. And getting home took me a long ass time. So I start my car back up, and at this point, I'm so freaked out that my leg is shaking on the clutch when I pull off. I also expect my car is going to overheat pretty soon unless I manage to find a petrol station and get some water put in my tank. So at no point do I get to calm down in any of this. On the bright side, I was pretty sure I was heading in the right direction. I could see the highway coming into view. Now, you know how when horses are close to home and they start going really fast? I did that. I actually had pretty good reasoning at the time. My car cools down when I drive faster, so I sped up, and I hit a massive ditch in the road. The car made it out, thank God. But on top of heating problems, I didn't want to have to go and look, and the road ahead of me was still dark as fuck. But I heard the front of my car hitting the road, and I'm worried about damage, so with a fuck my life, I step out the car and check it out. The bumper was a little messed up, but nothing too bad. I realize I keep going back and adding context, but this is also important to note. Up until I turned 20, I had the worst luck with cars. Breaking down was part of a Saturday night for me, so I wasn't entirely useless at evaluating / fixing things that went wrong. And so far, from what I could tell, there wasn't anything notably wrong with my car, other than some exterior damage. I scout the area a bit, and it looks safe, so I head back to my car and open the door. Then I get one of them, type of frights when I hear screaming off in the distance. It felt like Sin City, only in a more rural, scary-ass area. If God exists, I swear he was toying with me because like a goddamn horror movie, I hear the screams of a woman followed by a dog barking, then a baby crying, and an angry man. But I hop back in and drive on. Because of the left turn I took earlier, I know I was supposed to pull a little left-right to get back onto the main road that got me into all this. And then I could just play it safe, get to a gas station, and back on the highway. But going straight, parallel to the main road, took me to a dead end. So imagine that between all the shitty houses and barely tarred roads, there's this white cement barrier blocking the road off, and about 6 to 7 dudes with a fire sitting on top of it, chilling, drinking beers, and eating a fucking deer. I don't know if it was the same guy from earlier. Might have been, might have not been. Overall, a lot of the incidents of this evening, I try to put down this stupid ass coincidence. Anyways, I try to catch them in my headlights and keep calm. because all I have to do is turn around and get back onto the main road. They're eyeing me out. I wouldn't even say that in a bad way. They're just looking at me. And having been given enough reason to shit myself that night, this only made it worse. Because at the time, I was pretty sure that they wanted to me. I pulled a turnaround motion and speed off. And I really hated my life at that moment. Because there went the heat gauge. I was used to that. Usually if my car dipped out, I'd have to go for a few minutes, stop for a few minutes to get anywhere that wasn't abnormal. But on this particular day, I just wanted to fucking get home and my car was not having it. I run it through the red line for a little bit and just try to distance myself from people. Anyway, so I figure I'm in the clear. I just let my car overheat for a while and hope I don't get murdered. Open the trunk, open the bleeder. It's a little screw by the water tanks of BMWs that let you take the pressure out. And step back in while I wait. In my rearview mirror, I see the dudes walking up towards me. I don't immediately assume the worst. I obviously grant credit to the possibility that they are sinister, but it seems about as likely that they just want to help. I don't fucking know, but they come up to me. You have to understand that at this point, I've had the worst night ever and I just feel utterly pathetic, like I'm done trying. If you're scared for long enough, you tend to just embrace it, like a seeming pile of shit that's been in your living room for years and is so stuck to the carpet that you just learn to get along with it, watching TV, nostrils full of shit and all. So they come up and I give a half-hearted, "Hi." They're pretty cool. "How's it? What's up with your car?" I give them the story and they tell me Alexandria is pretty dangerous and that they'll stick with me until I'm ready to go. They offer for me to go to the fire with them, but I decline because holy shit, no. I can't say I got a bad vibe from them though. All in all, they seemed pretty nice and wanted to make sure that I was safe. So we did some talking, smoked some cigarettes. Most of them were just getting blazed Snoop Lion style. From the other end of the road, the way it came down that led me to the dead end, another group of dudes are walking up. It must be 12:30 a.m. by this point, and I can't fathom why anyone would be walking around so late, but whatever. I'm gonna call them Group 2 for reference, and the first group, Group 1. I'm not very creative. Anyways, I understand the language somewhat. Not well enough to speak much, but I can understand it enough to make out what happened. Here's how the conversation runs after pleasantries. Group 2. "What's up with Whitey?" Turns and said hi to me in English. Group 1. "Car broke down. Something white people and car problems." Group 2. Something car something can take it." Group 1. "Nah, he's a brother." Something along these lines. My translation wasn't spot on. Group 2. "That boy? There's no way he's a brother." Group 1. Skipping some in between talk here. "What do you want to do?" Group 2. "Freak him out and take his car. Something gun." I've kinda had enough of this. Group 1 was nice enough to stand up for me, but I'm not really the kind of guy who lets things go by, and sometimes I really wish I was, because it might keep me out of trouble, but in this case, I think I did the right thing. So I tap one of the guys next to me, a guy from my group, and say, "Did he want to see my gun?" He looks at me and says, "You have a gun?" I motion for him to keep it down and tell him I've got it in the car if we need to use it. He taps his buddy on the shoulder and whispers something. He tells Group 2 that I've got a gun. I don't. And that they should lay off. It's not going too well. Group 2 kinda grunts and keeps walking. A few of them trying to shake my hand as they do, but fuck that. I was a little too cocky in eyeing them down though. To me it made sense. They were just conspiring to rob me, then smile and wave as they walk past. But the last guy stops and says, "What, you don't want to shake my hand?" So I look around a bit and figure out what I'm gonna say. I speak Zulu. They all bust out laughing and Group 2 asks what I heard. I tell them succinctly, and they all laugh a little more. The dude who was fronting on me laughs, pats me on the back and says, all right, brother," and they head off. One of the guys from Group 1 was nice enough to get me some water for the car, and they helped me fill up and gave me some directions to where I'm going. Fuck yeah. I say my thanks and goodbyes and drive off, after a little while of making sure everything was sorted. Pretty confident now. My car won't overheat if I've done the water properly, so I should be fine. And finally, I know where I'm going, and it's super fucking simple. I make it out of Alexandria, and the story continues after that, but I guess you guys wanted the full story, so here's what I saw on the way out. 2 things to note, and I still have a hard time believing that I could have so much fucked up shit happen in one night, but then again, I'm not really a patron of Alexandria, and my friends have told me some fucked up stories about life in township, particularly one night. First thing is easier to talk about. I come up to a T-junction, just like my friendly protector said I would. But when my lights are shining down, I see something kind of weird. Something moving. Not exactly in line with my lights, but between two houses just off to the side, and there's a pretty small crack between them. So I squint, and I look really close, and no. What the? Yep, that's a man sucking another man's dick. So that's something I never wanted to see in person, or on video, but fine. The image lingered around for a bit, but it wasn't frightening or anything. But the next thing was pretty fucking terrifying. There was a little clearing, which is weird because Alexandria is like Tokyo building density, but there was this random spot of soil where a full-on bonfire was going. Describing this is kind of tricky because I'd never seen it before. I haven't seen it since, and I know fuck all about it. And I'm pretty sure it's just not a normal part of South African culture. But there were people singing and dancing while they made their way around the fire, and a few of them were screaming. But there was this dude on the floor, might have been a woman, couldn't really see, screaming his ass off, legs spread open, facing out, up, with a white tribal mask on, screaming and screaming, right in front of the fire, while everyone danced around him. Fuck me. About 6 blocks and I was out of Alexandria. I looped straight onto the road to Limboro Park and came to a stop at the intersection. Now, I was really freaked out while I was there because the guy I was going to visit got jacked at the same spot not too long ago. Light turns green and I'm in the clear. Then I remember something. I don't have a fucking phone. I made it to my friend's house and I'm outside. The house itself isn't that big, but the plot is pretty massive. I'd say 1 kilometer, a half mile or so around, and the house is right at the fucking back. And the only way is to either call him on his phone or call loud enough that someone in the house wakes up. So I'm standing out, calling to him, and not a fucking peep. It's dead silent. I'm worried about waking the neighbors, his parents, or anyone, and I'm just in a fucking terrible mood at this point. In retrospect, I don't really know why I didn't just go home right then, but I think it had something to do with just feeling like I'd been through so much. Little did I know, I was in for even more. Writing this now, I realized I never told anyone this full story, just bits. But holy shit, this night gets creepy. I drove to a nearby gas station. I say nearby. It was out of the neighborhood, over a bridge, and into the city that you'd expect halfway between Alexandria and a rich white folk with their equestrian estates and shit. It was Friday night, and I wasn't done just yet. I told the guy at the gas station about the heating trouble and said I just want to leave it for a while and check on it later. I head inside, buy some cigarettes and some Red Bull, and kind of just hang out eerily. I'm thinking, I need to make a phone call somehow, but asking around feels wrong. Plus the gas station is 100% dead. No watch, but I think it was near 2 a.m. After about 20 minutes, I figure it's safe to check. So I slowly undo the lid on the tank, and while I'm derping around with the radiator cables, a bakkie shows up. I don't know the American word for it. I guess truck? You know, those little cars with open backs that you can load shit into. Context. In South Africa, the Afrikaans people tend to drive bakkies, because for the most part, they do a lot of the labor and farming work. That's a stereotype, but in this case, it was accurate. They're blasting some dubstep type of music. They huddle out, probably drunk, laughing loudly, and go into the store. When they come out, I'm still knee-deep in my car, putting coolant in it with the petrol attendant, and they come up to me. They're wearing wife beaters and Monster Energy caps, jeans and flip-flops, both matching, and the way they approached me was not creepy. They kind of boxed me in from both sides and asked what trouble I was having. I tell them briefly, not paying much attention to them. And then, the one guy says, "You know how dangerous it is out here? Some dude will come stab you and take your wallet. We live close by. Why don't you come stay with us?" So my f***ing creeps lay off, please. Mood is setting in, and I just flat out say no. And I'm pretty aggressive about it. And then they go quiet, and I look up from my car and I see them both smiling at each other. And the other guy goes, "I don't think you understand," and walks a little closer. "I think you'll be much safer if you come with us." I'm pretty much done by this point. I'm done being nice or tactful to get through the night. I turn around, lean against the front of my car, and tap my finger against my nose. "I think you should f*** off," I say. They take it pretty well and back off without a word. I close my car up and start talking to the gas attendant about it. He agrees that it was pretty strange. I ask him if I can use his phone and he says sure. So to the random petrol attendant guy, "Thank you so much." I call my friend and he wakes up, and I tell him as briefly as I can what happened, just minor details. He laughs and says he'll wait outside for me in 15 minutes when I come over. He has a laugh over my weird ass night, but mid phone call I can hear him scream, "You Fucking cuff is a really bad word in South Africa. Imagine on steroids. Seriously. Afrikaans farmers used to say it to the black slaves, and I remember that this is a lot closer to home than American slavery, considering the apartheid only really ended in '94, and the treatment was brutal as hell. Long story short, this word is fucking serious, and it's not something you hear actors blurt out by mistake. It's just so taboo that hearing it makes me feel dirty. I tell my buddy I have to go, but I'll meet up with him soon, and the two African guys are roughing up the petrol attendant who was nice enough to keep me company and let me make a phone call. It's not terrible, but they're yelling right at his face and pushing him, and he's pretty visibly scared. I snap. I used to do a fair amount of fighting, and then one day I realized that I didn't want to be a dick, so I gave it up, and I hadn't thrown a punch since I was 16 by that time, which was a pretty big deal for me considering I used to compete, and when I wasn't competing, I was being a dick. But I snapped. I ran over with a scream that could have put King Leonidas to shame. They get a huge fright because I overpowered their racist yelling. I punched the first one with running force. The guy didn't even try and defend it, so I could tell they didn't really know what they were doing. I grabbed the other one and pull a headbutt because, hey, it's fucking late. They're both on the floor, not unconscious, but I'm so not interested in them that I turn away. I take the petrol attendant and make sure he's okay. He's just thanking me. Then I get hit by what feels like a fucking hammer in the back of my head. I drop down, quickly turn around, and sure enough, the two of them are back on their feet. I put my legs up and kind of guard from a few half-assed kicks and think it's over. I really didn't feel like fighting. The main reason I stopped is that my adrenaline rushes would make me feel like I was puking and crying for no damn reason, and I'm kind of feeling a combination of that rage by now. Finally, I say, "Listen, I'm going to jump to my feet now, and if you still want to be here when that happens, I'm not going to let you get back up." They back off. The one guy's face is bloody from the headbutt already. They get in their car and say, "We're coming back for you in that fucking cafe." I'm not too worried because I'm going to leave soon. And it's not likely they're going to follow me, right? I tell the petrol attendant to tell the cops and wait until they show up. They agree and keep an eye on things, but tell me that I shouldn't go off on my own. I insist I'll be fine. I pull out and head back the way I came. I cross back over the highway, but just before I do, I notice a car behind me doing a U-turn so that it's right behind me. But again, I pass it off as coincidence. I was actually feeling pretty calm by this point. I think I got a lot of the anger out on the racist guys from earlier. My head is pounding a bit from the blow, but it's not too bad. I turn my indicator on and he mimics me. I take a closer look at the car and sure enough, it's a Baki. I can't make out the faces of the drivers, but there are definitely at least two guys sitting in the back. So now I'm on this tiny, one-lane road that leads around Limboro Park because the main road is closed off. Limboro Park is also as quiet as a neighborhood gets, so I'm not going to run into anyone who's going to help me. I'm pretty obviously being tailed right now. I rev my car as fast as I can. I'm not a great driver, but my car is obviously faster than whatever they were rolling with. I take the corner while shitting myself that I'm going to spin out or flip over, and I'm sitting a decent amount of distance, but they're definitely trying to speed up and follow me. I go down the first actual Limboro Park road, kill my lights and make a right turn, which happens to be the road to my buddy's house. I kill the engine and park under a tree because that shit always works in Need for Speed. Meanwhile, they roll past slowly and see my car, so they make the turn. I call myself a retard and quickly start up and drive off again. My buddy Gordon isn't outside like he said he'd be, so I literally have nothing to do other than circle around a bit. They start yelling and waving cricket bats around, and I'm kind of in fight or flight mode, not so much analyzing what's going on in my head. After about 3 trips around the block and a bunch of screaming later, Gordon is finally outside. I quickly loop my car into their driveway and jump out and close the gate. The rednecks stop their car, get out, and start banging on the gate. Gordon is massive. He's got that archetypical rugby player build, 6'5", at least 130 kilograms, most of it muscle. He asks me what the fuck is going on, and I tell him that some assholes were roughing up a gas attendant, and now they're pissed off with me, because Princess over there bleeds too easily. South African gates are pretty secure, because me, crime, Gordon's family had a lot of break-ins, and they made the place like Fort Knox with a crazy electric fence, so they can't get past, but they can yell and be obnoxious. Gordon sizes them up and tells me that there's only 4 of them, and we could probably take them. I tell him it's not fucking worth it, and we could just call the cops. He laughs and tells me to wait there. I'm not happy with it, but he drives my car up the long driveway while I sit there and listen to 4 dudes being pissed off. It's actually kind of funny, in retrospect, because all they wanted to do was beat me to a pulp, but the gate was too much of an issue. It takes forever, but Gordon finally gets back. He steps out the car with a big grin and starts firing his paintball gun. It wasn't just one of those normal shitty ones. He spent about $500 on a ridiculous handheld gun that looks like something out of Halo. He also had it loaded with pepper and rubber bullets for a whole 30-clip magazine. It also had a daddy gas canister on it. Gordon pelts them a few times, and the pepper spray bullets really get them coughing. They get into their car, pull their wife beaters over their mouths, whatever, and drive off. The funny thing is, the pepper spray worked so well that they couldn't even yell anything as they drove off. They just flipped us the bird and Gordon was laughing his ass off, and I can't blame him. But I was honestly so full of terror, anger, confusion, and all around this world to really find a humor in it. I told him some of what happened, what I remembered. Truthfully though, he missed out on a lot of the details, a lot. So Reddit is the first to ever hear the full story of the most consistently fucked up night. I got inside, it was 4 a.m., and I had the most deserved beer of my entire life. Now, have you ever seen one of those horror movies where everything seems to be sorted out, and they dragged a storyline out for no fucking reason? And you're just like, please, can this shitty movie end? Yeah, that's about to happen. Okay, here it is. The final part of the story. I've already pointed out how weird it is that all of a sudden the entire universe seemingly wanted to shit on me, so I won't elaborate on that any further. I'm at Gordon's house now, drinking a beer, and I tell him about my night, albeit forgetting several details. We laugh it off and he tells me that he has an old school friend staying over there, Jason. I know Jason pretty well. We all used to play computer games together, and he was always an odd guy, and that only got worse as he got older. He just gave off really weird vibes when he spoke, and he was socially awkward as hell. I'm socially awkward, but he made me look pretty normal. I ask about him and Gordon tells me that he's been really strange. He's sleeping upstairs now though, so I don't have to worry. We kept shooting the shit, and I'm a few beers down when Jason comes downstairs, looking all tired and dazed. I say, hey, we speak a little bit. It's about 5:30 a.m. when I decide I should get some sleep. Also, beer makes me tired as so I tell Gordon and he takes me to the spare bedroom. Jason has the room next to mine, and he goes into it. I say goodnight and lie down in bed, but before even a few seconds have passed, Jason comes in. I realize that he's drunk as fuck, and even though he'd slept a bit, he still smelled like alcohol and was all woozy, so I wasn't taking him too seriously. He sits on the side of the bed and starts telling me about how shitty his life has been, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's cool. He'd recently been through a breakup, and he tells me that when he was having sex with his girlfriend, she would just sort of lie there, limp fish, and when he was done, she'd never want to cuddle. I find this hilarious. He said it with so much passion, like he really, really wanted his ex-girlfriend to cuddle with him post-coitus. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just not something the guys blurt out on the usual basis. So I burst out laughing and he says, "Don't you fucking laugh." I kept laughing because I genuinely think he's still rolling with the joke, and he turns to me and says, "Stop fucking laughing, it isn't fucking funny." I take the hint and stop laughing. Then I say, "Sorry dude, I've had a bit of a f***ed up night. I really just want to sleep." And he says, "So sleep then," still just chilling on the side of the bed. "I'm not gonna sleep with you here, get out," I say in a pretty friendly way. I don't know what happened next. I don't know if he was just being drunk or passing out, or him doing it intentionally, but he collapsed on me. I throw him off, and he lands on the side of the bed and just straight up jumps on top of me. Me and Gordon went to school with this guy, and he used to do a lot of play fighting or whatever, wrestling type shit, and I assume he's doing that. Despite me telling him that all I want to do is fucking sleep, he keeps jumping on me or trying to wrestle my head or something. So eventually, I get really pissed off and decide to really hurt him. He's basically lying on top of me, not doing much or anything. So I grab him by the shirt and lift him, just push him into the wall. His head hit pretty hard and he yells, "Ow, fuck." I'm not that angry, but I say, "Dude, get the fuck out. I really want to sleep." He walks towards the door, opens it, and then he says, "I shit you not. I'm gonna slit your throat in your sleep." Fuck this shit. I facepalm and he walks out. I get up and figure there's no fucking way I'm sleeping here. Not on a night like this. I'm gonna go home, something I should have done hours ago. I go to Gordon's room and I wake him up. I tell him what happened and say I'm just over the entire night and want to go home. He tells me it'll be better if I just stick it out. It's still dark and some sleep will do me good. He has another bed in his room and he can just lock the door, so I agree. He locks up and we go to sleep. Cue 7 a.m. Someone's knocking on the door. Gordon doesn't wake up, but I do and just kind of waltz over in my zombie-like, still sleeping daze and open up. There's Jason. standing. Just standing there, head down. I have a few questions about this. Why is he standing there? Did he sleep at all? He probably tried to check the room to see if he could kill me. He doesn't say or do anything. And I'm still stuck in that overwhelm. Like I've spent too much time being scared to feel scared so much that just wanting to puke and then sleep, because I really think that's what I need more than anything right now. So I give it a few seconds. And I shut the door and lock it. He does the worst thing he could possibly do. Nothing. If he knocked again, I'd get it. But this seemed like some paranormal activity type shit. I'm lying in bed and I realize sleep isn't gonna happen. So I'm basically staring at the ceiling. It's also starting to get fucking cold, and it's really foggy outside. Gordon's room has a balcony with a glass window that looks out into the garden, which is massive. So I'm kind of checking it out, because looking out and breathing was the only thing that could make me feel normal for a few moments. I slip my shoes on, grab a jacket out of Gordon's cupboard, and step outside. It had that crisp, cold morning air to it, and to be honest, for those few moments, I really felt okay, even a little bit peaceful. I have a cigarette and I watch the fog drift around. I head back inside after a few minutes and lie down under the blanket, cold as fuck, waiting for it to warm up, when I look over the window and goddamn fucking Jason is just standing there, just creeping. I ask what the fuck he's doing and he says, "Let me in." So I do. He steps in and sits down and I just can't resist asking what's wrong with him. He tells me about how upset he is about his girlfriend. And I listen and I tell him I totally get what he's going through, but he's turning into a creep. He agreed and we actually had a nice talk. I ended up taking him out a few weeks later to talk to random people and get him out of his shell a little bit. It didn't work, but it was funny as hell to watch. And it makes me feel really bad to say it, but it was just really, really good cringe humor. Anyways, Jason isn't really a concern anymore. It's also early in the morning, sun is up, and I'm clearly not allowed to sleep. So I head downstairs and raid Gordon's fridge for more beer. Whenever we visit each other, the fridge and pantry are free game, so I'm making myself some breakfast and talking to Jason, trying to cheer him up. And Gordon's parents wake up and come downstairs. I say hey, they leave pretty soon after, and I ask Jason to grab the remote to let me out. Things finally seem pretty calm. It's about 8:30 a.m. now. I drive out and head home. Skipping Alexandria by taking the highway to my house is only 10 minutes away or so. There are 2 routes I can take home, and I usually switch it up based on whatever one ends up happening randomly. And on this particular day, I drive down a long road that winds down a mountain pass. So a long, windy, narrow road. Right before that though, I drive past a small blue Daihatsu stopped, not exactly in the middle of the road, but enough to block the one lane so people driving past are slowing down and hooting because it's just annoying. I join the angry mob and give the guy a bit of horn action as I drive past, but I notice he's sleeping. He looks full on passed out, and this is a pretty busy street. I'm worried he's diabetic and randomly fainted or something, so I pull over in a little parking spot and walk over to him. I also noticed there was another Red Bull lying in my car, so score. I walk up to him and he's got his window open, chair all the way back, just sleeping. I get closer. The car smells like shit. This smell hits my face and I genuinely think this fucker shit himself and is sitting in it. There are crumbs all over his jacket and empty plastic bags scattered across the car. I snoop for at least a minute before noticing that he's been staring at me this whole fucking time. Pretty average looking dude, late 20s, early 30s. Thought he was sleeping. So after silently screaming like a little girl, I say, "Oh shit, I thought you were asleep, sorry." He smiles, and I'll never forget how creepy his smile was. Imagine a dude who smelled like shit in a tiny little blue Daihatsu smiling at you like he was the Mona Lisa. I can't describe it. And he says, "No, I'm not sleeping." A little lost for words, I point out that he's kind of in the middle of the road, and I ask if he's feeling alright. He keeps up that smile and says, "Don't worry about it. You have a good day now." His voice was soft and then pathetic, pedo fashion. It was just really creepy. I decided to let it go and walk away. But I just get this feeling that he's going to follow me. I remember that I'm in South Africa, and in South Africa, it's kind of a hijacking routine for someone to lie out in the middle of the street playing dead, so that when you go to help them, someone just jumps into your car and buzzes out. There are some pretty elaborate schemes to steal your shit, so I think I've just fallen for one. I'm walking to my car, and when I look back, he's walking behind me. I get to my car, turn around, and watch him. He stops right in front of me, not saying a word. That smell follows him. I'm pretty sure he was on drugs, but seriously, what drug does that? he wasn't cocaine active. He seemed maybe a little doped out, but there was something more. Maybe opiates and alcohol? I don't f***ing know, and I'm still sticking to my story when I say he shot himself, cause that smell followed him. He doesn't say anything. So I do. What? The smile came back. Nothing. I heave a sigh and get in my car. As I drive off, he puts his hand through my open window and tries to hold on, but it's so half-assed that he doesn't even step to keep up with me, and I just drive on. I don't really know what he was doing. I don't know what he wanted, and honestly, I don't care. For all I know, the armed guard could have been behind me at that point, and I wouldn't have cared. Home was just a few blocks away. I made it. I finally had fucking made it. I opened the garage and parked my car. I closed the garage and no one had crept in. I took a deep breath and I had trouble believing that I was actually home. It was fucking beautiful. I never appreciated having a home before, a place that is just safe. So I did the only logical thing I could do. I went to the kitchen and I had a double whiskey. I had a beer and I had a glass of red wine. Then I passed the fuck out. I slept until about 10 p.m. and then I lazily drifted in bed and watched movies and shit. It was beautiful. And there was no creeps. I charged my phone, told my mom I loved her. I never even told anyone what happened. I told them a few parts, but seriously, who the fuck believed that all this happened in the space of less than 12 hours? I didn't go out for a long time after that. It seemed like everything in the world would just go wrong. I was terrified. And I still think I was justified in not really trusting the world for a while after. However, I did notice one thing. It prompted a lot of what happened. The way I was raised, my brother and I were expected to be staunch and masculine, never back down type of thing. We went to boarding schools, along with Gordon, which explains why he was so happy to just fight the four guys that made some amazing stories on their own. But the whole mentality we were groomed into was that if you ever got angry with someone and didn't do anything about it, you're a b****. That attitude has its place. But if I hadn't been so damn stubborn about giving Jason shit, giving Group 2 shit, giving the Afrikaners at the gas station shit, and finding out why the Diatsu man was sleeping, that night wouldn't have been so eerie. That attitude has its place, but I had to tone it down a lot. In a way, it's a little sad, because honestly, if I see someone in trouble, I'd love to go up and help them. But most of the time, I can't find it in me anymore, because they could just be full of shit. All in all, even though it's weird to say, that night really changed my life. I just chilled out after that. Not out of fear. Well, first out of fear, but later it was because it felt easier and more natural. So I've made a full recovery, I think, and the story is pretty damn cool. Also, I think I got all my creep experiences over and done with that night, because it hasn't happened since. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and once again, thank you all for taking so much interest in it.